right.
If you can. A couple things to touch bases about. Jeb has an announcement and some things to pass out real quickly. And I also, while he's doing that, want to encourage or invite anybody that's interested. I gave a talk Thursday night up at OUC on lost mounds that I'm trying to rediscover, and I've been working with several people, including Tim Everhart from out at Hopewell Culture. And I think we made a couple really big discoveries. But the follow-up on that was this past Saturday and this coming Saturday, we've booked the tour trolley here in Chillicothe. And so I did 2 tours, one at 10 and one at 11 last Saturday, and they went super great. It took us a while to coordinate with the driver because the driver didn't know where I wanted her to stop and whatever, and I'm facing the crowd in the back of the bus, and we're going one by one. I said, slow down, whatever. But by the second round of it, we were like a professional team. It went really well. So if you want to learn about some mounds and where they were once, and they're not there now, and I can tell you a little bit of the story about all of the ones we're going to see, and we're going to go all the way from the trolley barn, which is on 7th Street. You have to meet there, and they will take us up here to North King Street, where the first mound is, and we'll work our way all the way over to the Adena Mound. And there's stories about all this. But the cool thing that just blew everybody away, because we drove towards the Adena Mound on Orange Street, and we took a street over before we got to where it was, and we went by Lake Ellensmere. We came in the back way, and I said, now, just sit in your seat, just kind of relax there, and just see what happens. And all at once, you're going on Orange Street, and next thing you know, you're up like this, and you're up like this, and we're sitting up on top of the mound, because that mound is right under that street. They were just blown away to think that there could be, and I had a picture of how big this Adena Mound was. It was 30 feet tall, and 140 feet in diameter. It was huge. And they just couldn't imagine that there were traces that was still there under that road. So it's that kind of a tour. You have to call into the trolley people and book a seat. It's totally free. But last Saturday, we didn't have any empty seats. It was filled up within 2 days. So if you're interested in doing that, come on out. Sign up with them, and hopefully I'll see you there. I brought some flyers on that if you want to take one to remind you. I'm going to put it right here at this last seat. So when you walk out, you might see it.
In fact, what Gary's doing that, I'll just start these around here, please. Just pass them around, please. Those are some free and open to the public archaeology events coming up from Portsmouth, Chillicothe, Circleville, Serpent Mound from now until from June, and please share the information with anybody that you can. Thank you.
A little bit of other business here, just a reminder. Next month, we're going to have Archaeology Day right here. We'll empty this room out over the Conestoga wagon. We'll have rows of tables there, and there, and up here. And we would love to get everybody to either put out some of their stuff, and if you don't feel inclined to do that, at least come here and help explain stuff to people. It might even be useful to have some people that could go upstairs, because it'll be an open house here, and you can take people up to see the artifact room up there. And if you've not been up there, it's going to blow you away. So keep that in mind, and we'll talk about what we need to do, because what we're going to try to accomplish in April is we're going to, instead of having a meeting and then 4 or 5 days later have this Archaeology Day, we'll make the Archaeology Day a combination meeting and exhibit. And again, please help us do this. It's our chance to give back to the community and little kids to come by. And we had a kid last year that brought in the most phenomenal artifact that he found in a creek. They're out there, and these kids are finding better stuff than most of us old men are, so. It was an eye-opener. So anyway, if you're ready, let's kind of get this thing started. Barney, did I leave anything out that you wanted to bring up? Where's Barney at?
Right here.
Oh, you're hiding, all right. Let's see if I can do this page down. Here we go.
Point it at the projector.
Yeah, I'll get it. I just got to get my brain.
There you go.
All right, tonight's program is called the Spetnagel Turkeytail Cache. And this is quite a story. I've been here since 1977, and I've heard mention of this artifact cache the whole time I've been here. And the most specific description I've ever had, other than if you do some research and read some stuff, is local people will say, it's just a little bit north of Chillicothe. Well, that really narrows it down, let me say. But I actually know where it's at, and I've done a lot of digging, and we'll be getting into this. But to do this program right, we're going to do it in 4 parts, and see if I can show you what they are. So first of all, we're going to talk about Albert Cutler Spetnagel. And I'm totally impressed with this man, simply because if you go upstairs and you check out the prehistoric room, 90% of what's on display there was his personal collection. And this man was the director of the Ross County Historical Society, much like Mr. Kuhn here, from 1926 till his death in 1946. And impressive man, and the more I get to tell you about him, the more you'll see what I'm really hinting at here. Then we're going to talk about how the discovery was made by a man named George Wachter. Then we're going to take a look at what turkeytails are all about. And then finally, see if we can claw away and get some idea of who might have made these things, what culture is responsible for them. At one time, I remember when Bob Converse was still alive and in his prime, he was saying that they were made by the glacial cane people. And since then, some other people are saying, well, no, it's the red ochre people. And then other people are saying, nah, it's the Adena. And you'll see why there's some confusion here, because it's really hard to pin this all down. But we'll get into that. So here we go. Albert Cutler Spetnagel, born in 1869, died in 1946. And if you read about him, you find out that he grew up hunting artifacts in the plowed fields of our area. So can you imagine what the fields would have been like in 1878 or 79 when you're 10 years old and you're plowing behind a mule, and my God, it's just, it blows my mind to think what he was finding already. And in his prime, he became a well-known local Chillicothe businessman. He owned, or not owned, but he was the president of the Spetnagel Hardware Company, and its location is just the next building east of the poorhouse on 2nd Street. So if you've ever eaten at the poorhouse, it's the next building down. He is what we would call an avocational archaeologist. He never went in for any schooling at all, but he was involved with many, many local excavations and projects. And I don't know if it was through those contacts or if it was through his business contacts, but he had a wide-reaching network of people that just knew he loved artifacts, and they were always giving him stuff. If you go upstairs to the collection there, maybe sometime we just need to have a meeting here and do nothing but go up to the collection, if the room were big enough. But anyway, up in the collection there, on one side of the big case in the middle is a cache of something like maybe 16 or so upper Mercer Flint, unnotched, unstemmed blades that are each about 4.5 to 5 inches long and up to 2 inches wide. And right next to them on the wall is this letter, a copy of a letter that was written to him in 1922 by somebody living in Colton, Ohio. Said, I found these, thought you'd want them, send them over here to you. They were found in this township, near this road and whatever. So it's well documented, and people just gave him stuff. He had contacts all the way out to Cahokia. People were hooking him up with artifacts from there as well. And when he died, the headline for the newspaper said something basically like Ross County's foremost authority on archaeology succumbs, or whatever it was, He was highly regarded. Some of the professional archaeologists that he would hang and bang with were Gerard Falke and William C. Mills, who excavated the Adena Mound, amongst other things. Falke worked a lot with Moorhead. And Chatrone, who worked at Mound City, who worked at Hopewell Mound Group, who did the site excavation in 1926.
Man, who's this Howard Carter guy? Any of you guys know him? No one? Can touch. This is the guy that excavated the tomb of King Tut in 1922-23. And when he came to the United States and was lecturing all over the place, he was up at the Ohio State University, and he wanted to meet Spetnagel because Spetnagel had worked with Chitrone, wanted to meet the two of them because they had worked out at site. And if you read any of the 1926-27 headlines about the excavations out there, it says Ross County's own Valley of the Kings here, because the things that they found at site were just so incredible. They compared it to the stuff that was coming out of Egypt. And so Howard Carter wanted to come here. He was not able to make it down into Ross County, so the next best thing was to have lunch and a celebration with Chitrone and Spetnagel. Just some samples of some of the headlines in newspapers from today, and you'll see how he was involved. Rotary to Boost Park Movement. This is a movement to have what we think of as Mound City today saved, and to recover any damage that would have been done when Camp Sherman was out there. So August 30th, 1921, Al Spetnagel told his fellow Rotarians, blah, 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 properly preserved it as it deserved to be. He really spearheaded the movement to save Mound City. Second one, and he was active as a businessman, he was active with Rotary, and so you can see in April 11th, 1923 in the Gazette, Al Spetnagel, blah, 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 the movement for turning Mound City at Camp Sherman into a national park. 1923, what a vision this guy had. And then back in 1921 again, there's headlines about how the final papers have been signed for the Mound City Park to be turned over to the Ohio Historical and Archaeological and Historical Society. So this guy, he really was a mover and shaker about doing things right for our mounds here. Headlines over here. I don't know if that's just a little bit off because you're missing local folks here all about King Tut. And this is June 6, 1924. Paper covered how Spetnagel met with Howard Carter. And I've blown up one section of it over here. Howard Carter, famed discoverer of the tomb of Tutankhamun near Luxor, Egypt, who lectured at the Memorial Hall, Columbus, was entertained Thursday by Albert Spetnagel and Dr. Charles Mills. The reporter wasn't very good. His name was William Corliss Mills. We got him as Charles Mills there. Curator at the Ohio State Archaeological Museum. And then it continues, Mr. Spetnagel displayed a picture of a recent find at the Hopewell Mound, and Mr. Carter remarked on its similarity to objects he had found in Egypt. Now, I think I know what the artifact is because I found another reference to the Hopewell Mound, and I know that Spetnagel actually found an artifact in mound number 17 out of the Hopewell Mound group. And we'll get to see what that was. So here's an archaeological dig going on out at the site Pricer Mound. And to help you get your bearings there are some famous people here. That's Spetnagel. Short guy, I'm guessing he's about 5'10" at the most, maybe 5'8", between 5'8" and 5'10". And on his knees, really getting into it, that's Chitrone. And there are lots of pictures of Chitrone at work at the site. One of them shows him smoking his pipe as he's using his trowel to open up this little cavity where there are 4 or 5 huge effigy pipes. And it's kind of I think it was staged to have a guy smoking a pipe while he's digging out pipes. But incredible discovery. And let's see here. Other things that made the newspaper about Spetnagel, late 1930s, 1939, our mounds, priceless heritage from ancient days. Ross County has over 450 earthworks, the study pointed out. And Let's see, if I may have circled it here, let me double check. That is a double-headed waterfowl pipe, I guess you would call it. It's either a goose or a wood duck of some kind, and at both ends. And he found that in mound number 17 out of the Hopewell Mound Group. We actually, if you go up to our museum upstairs, we have a picture of that illustrated on one of the walls, and we also have a model of it. But from what I understand, it's the original is up at the Ohio History Connection, and I'm not sure if it's on exhibit. Do you know if
It is.
it's still on exhibit? Yeah. Do you have any idea? So it's kind of special. I bet you that's what he had the picture of, since he personally found it. And in the little caption underneath the circled area there, it says in the Hopewell Mound. And it's that same little phrase there.
Is that a sea pipe?
Is it?
Sea pipe? Stuff from that rock?
I can tell with your mask on.
Pipe stone.
I can't tell you do you know what the material is?
I'm guessing steatite.
Oh, steatite, yeah. And there were several steatite Hopewell pipes found around here, so yeah.
It's
It
jet
looks
black.
like it's jet black. You're right. It's jet black. Yeah, I wasn't understanding you, Rich. Sorry.
You say it was, you could smoke it from either end?
I don't think so. I think it's only smoke from one end.
Okay.
But it's just rare to have two heads, one at each end on a pipe. Usually, as most people know, you usually face into the eyes of the creature that was in effigy there as you inhaled them with the pipe. And like I told the people Saturday morning on the trolley tour, don't think of this as like you're sitting around after having a great dinner and you just want to relax and you're lighting up. These pipes are very sacred things. That they're part of some kind of ritual or religious observance, whatever you want to call it. And also I know that in later, closer to historical times, there's a lot of documentation of using these pipes. A shaman would come along and they would inhale, and then they would blow the smoke all over you as a cleansing thing and heal you as well. So there's what the pipe looks like up close. I don't know what's supposed to be in the duck's mouth, but I'll make sure you see what I'm saying. Nostril, edge, it's kind of a squared off strut to the beak, and then something down here is the lower jaw of the beak. I have no idea what that's supposed to be, or if they just had to have it there so that they could drill into it to have a tube hole for a tube pipe like that. So, double-headed waterfowl effigy pipe. Found in 1924 by Spetnagel while excavating Mound 17. In the corner of the Hopewell Mound Group. It's now in the collections of the Ohio History Connection. So back to this, who's the guy that has his photograph circled here? Anybody recognize him? He's not pictured very much. But this guy, for some reason, he starts showing up in Chillicothe around 1889 in the newspapers, and he's associated with Warren K. Moorhead, when he attacks all of the mounds in Ross County. I think something like 90 mounds in one summer. These guys came through and they just hit every place. And Falke was one of the main crew bosses and directors for Moorhead, because Moorhead really traveled light. I was talking with Tim Everhart. He's done a lot of research on Moorhead, and Moorhead would ride out Sulphur Lick Road and go up to the Hopewell Mound Group there, the Mordecai Hopewell Farm, and he'd get the guys going. Next thing you know, he'd head back in, and he takes a train to Cincinnati to go to the opera. And he comes back one day, and he finds that the workmen had been supposedly digging there, was it Mount 25, and there was this big pile of rocks, and Hopewell says, "What in the heck is this?" And I said, "Oh, there was some kind of an effigy of a cat on the side of the hill here, and we had to dig through it to keep going." And we're heading, what the heck is going on here? Have you guys ever heard? I mean, do you know if it's a true story or? Brett's saying it's a true story. So he wasn't always diligent about keeping people on task. So by the 1940s, and once he's got the Hopewell Mound City Park under the control or auspices of the Ohio Archaeological and Historical Society, he thinks this place is just a party place. We need to make it more educational. And so he starts making contacts with various people, and he wants to set up a little museum out there. So it's not there today, but there used to be a shelter house. Basically, if you go right through the center of the oval around the mounds out at Mound City, and you go to the back of it, in the vicinity of the back of that, there was a shelter house. Anybody around here remember? Because my wife does. I won't tell you her age, but she can remember going out there for picnics. Hey, Tim.
Thank you.
And what they did was Spetnagel actually supplied artifacts to set up a museum out there. And if you look at the photograph of the map on the upper right corner, that map is upstairs, and I don't know if Tom's in on this or not yet, but that map was originally drawn up to be exhibited in this museum out at Mound City. And it's kind of neat because there's enough, forever I've been trying to track down who it was that made this map. And in the corner it says, print about this long, K-O-O-N-T-Z. And I figured it's got to be someone's name, but how do you track down anybody with just those 5 or 6 letters, whatever it is there? And so I've been digging through old gazettes and old advertisers, anything I could find about mounds, anything I could find related to this cache, and I came across this article dated May 21st, 1942, and it says, among other things, A.C. Spetnagel, donor of the museum, blah, 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 blah. This map executed by Julia Irene Kuntz, senior fine arts student at Ohio State University. So we nailed down her name, and I did some genealogical research, and I found out she was born in California, that she was living in Worcester, Ohio, with her parents there, and that she was, according to the 1940 census, she was a third-year art student at the Ohio State University, and I matched her up. And I'm thinking, if this lady is still alive, I would like to get a hold of her and let her know that our museum here has preserved this map that she's made. She died in 2016. So close. That would have been great. I would like to know what she used as her source. That map is very similar to the 1914 map of Ross County showing all the mounds that was in Mills's Atlas of Ohio, Archaeological Atlas of Ohio. What do you think, Brett? It has the look, right? Yeah. But if you look around the end, just these glorious illustrations of Mound City and the Liberty Earthworks and Hopewell Group and all this. I mean, it's a phenomenal thing. But so you've got to imagine that was out in the Mound City Shelter House Museum at one time. It did not last. I'm not sure if I'm telling the truth about this or not, if this is factual, but supposedly people kept breaking in. And they finally gave up on it, and he decided he's going to find someplace else for it. And since he had connections here, he started making plans to have his collection and any of the stuff that was out there at Mound City brought into the Ross County Historical Society. One more time. Sadly, Ross Authority on Archaeology stricken at 76. And it describes him and all all of his accomplishments, Rotary and other things like that. But the main thing they pointed out in this was he sought to educate the public. He viewed archaeology as a hobby. He knew Howard Carter, and he was a leader in the preservation of the Mound City Park. Soon after his death, this is the room that they set up on the second floor to house his artifacts. Everything in there except for the Adena man in the little case there, that can't be the real one, was set up by his friend J. Herbert Mattis. And I'd like to track that guy down too. And I'm not sure who this is in this other view of the room, but he's staring pretty intently at some of the nicest looking knives and spear points you can find around here. What happened to that room? At first it was called the Indian Room. Soon it morphed into the Mound Builder Room. And then in the 1990s, when we were planning to add this middle addition and connect the two houses here at the museum, Jamie Blubin, Jeb Bowen, Dave Tao, Michael Greer, and a host of Barney and a host of others worked to, and this is just 1/3 of the room here. So we updated, we have a huge case in the middle. There's the map still preserved over there. One of the most incredible bifacial stem points you'll ever see. You got to go see that, Flint. It's 8 1/4 inches long. It's as thick as 2 credit cards. 8 1/4 inches from tip to stern. 2 credit cards lying on top of each other, and this guy was able to nap that out without snapping it. Yeah. There's some incredible stuff up there, and this is mostly from his collection. So you can see, I can't say enough good about Spetnagel. And there's the map circled for you. And then here's the headlines. I mean, it was a big deal that his objects are all going to be turned over to the Ross County Historical Society. So you can see the August 3rd, 1946 Gazette. But an interesting thing, and I want to talk to Pat Metter, who is one of our archivists here, basically our resident historian for all of Ross County. Supposedly in that, a lot of objects that were given to the Ross County Historical Society was a copy of ancient monuments of the Mississippi that had been in the possession of Edwin Davis's father-in-law, one of the Woodbridges. And it actually has the Woodbridge's signature in it. And we figured that it was one of the original copies that probably was turned over to Davis after he and Davis got their manuscripts back for the publication of the Ancient Monuments book by the Smithsonian in 1848. So that's something I think that we could even maybe have a special display and showing that and giving the history of it if it's still here, because it was supposed to be given here.
I had one too.
Is yours signed by Squire? Cool. Yeah.
I sold it.
I really just like to see it and photograph it. All right, part 2, discovery of the cache. And the reason this needs to be brought out is because there's just so much misinformation that has developed over time. The first mention of it is in a June 13th, 1922 Chillicothe Advertiser, and they followed up with a couple more articles on it. And in that first report, it said that it was discovered by workmen while excavating a cellar on the property of George A. Wachter on Laurel Street. Now that is really important, and that's very specific. And I went to the 1921 and 1923 Chillicothe City directories because I couldn't find one for 22, so I kind of bracketed where were the Wachter family members. And I found in 1921 they were living at 653 647 Laurel Street, and in 1923 they were living at 653. And so that you don't have to really do any calculating, just imagine this: on the north face of an east-west running street, there is 647, and right next to it evidently was an empty lot. And I think what happened is that George Wachter decided, I'm going to build my own house. He'd been married to his wife since 1902 by then, I believe. And I think they were just a big family and they needed to expand, so he decides he's going to build his own house. And so I'm not sure My guess is they were still living in 647 in 1922 when the discovery was made, and the discovery was made while they were digging the cellar for the house that's going to be 653. It makes sense, but I was not there. So, and here's the thing about the cache. It's made from blue-gray Harrison County chert and possibly some of the other blue-gray flints. And this whole thing about the Turkeytails is the greater majority of these Turkeytails are made out of a blue-gray flint. I don't know why they were enamored with that, but you'll see. And as Rich and others will tell you, there are several different versions of these blue-gray flints, and some of them come from as far away as 600 miles from here. And the closest ones are about 220 miles from here in southern Indiana. And there seems to be the whole range of those out of this St. Genevieve limestone formation showing up here in Ross County. So here's some of the actual headlines and newspaper clips. More discoveries looked for when Big Mound is explored. And I think that's an important headline, and I think that caused confusion later on. Because I think that when you read this article and you find out that George A. Wachter began excavation of a cellar on his Laurel Street property, blah, 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 that you think his property must have had a big mound on it. And I did some digging into what that article is all about. It's several columns, and that mound is really the Ginther Mound. So they're expecting that not only are they finding great things here on Laurel Street, but they're even going to find better things when Mills excavates the Ginther Mound. And then there are a couple of other mounds under an asterisk down here in the bottom right corner, because in the last paragraph it says, near the place of the find are the Adena Mound, another mound just within the loop of the street railway, and the Story Mound. So we've got Story and Adena we know about, but what's this mound within the loop of the street railway? So as part of my mound project, for the talk I gave last Thursday night, I had to figure out, where did the trolley run? When was it built, and where was it at various stages in relation to when the archaeologists came here? And what I found out was, at first there was a loop that went from downtown up through Church Street, where it intersects with North High, and then it doubled back. The second loop, the one that they're talking about, was a later extension around 1891 that cut west from that original end of the loop and went down Buckeye Street all the way to North Pike Street, and then ran down Delano. So what they're saying is this unnamed mound there is within that loop, so it's got to be someplace south of Buckeye and east of Delano, and the only mound that can be is the Miller Mound. There's a lot of confusion as those of you that were here Thursday night or up at OUC found out there was no systematic naming or terminology used for these mounds. One man's mound number 3 is another man's Mr. Smith's mound or whatever. And because of that, the location of those mounds got lost, and they're important for even figuring out things like a Spetnagel Cache, as you'll see here. So underlined from that first column over there, though, they proved to be spearheads of flint or chert ranging in length from 3.5 to 10.5 inches. That's just incredible. He found more than 200 pieces, and not a one of them was intact. They were all like that little collection I have up here to make sure you check out. I'm going to walk over and grab one real quick. Does that help? As you can see, the tips are broken away, but they have these unique bases on it. They're a stem point that juts out and then tapers sharply back into like a triangular base. Another article about them showed up in the Columbus Evening Dispatch in March 18, 1923, and it talks about how Spetnagel's turned them over to the Archaeological and Historical Museum at the Ohio State University. So that's where they are currently today and where they've been since soon after their discovery. They worked on piecing together all the broken pieces. There were something like 300 pieces found, and they know they missed some of them. They were even finding them in the garden next to where the cellar was being put in. But they were able to piece together a total of 200 blades, most of them like 4.5 to 5.5 inches long. Incredible. I don't know if there's ever been another cache of turkey tails that's that large. Jeb, have you ever? I know you've cataloged a lot of points. Yeah, that's okay. I'm just hoping that you can shed light if we need to here. Another article in the Chillicothe Advertiser, March 23rd, 1923, Ancient Ceremony of the Broken Spearheads. And they theorized what kind of a ritual they must have had to be able to break all of these up. But the main thing is, again, it just, Albert Spetnagel advised of the find, of the first find, conducted the search, and finally gathered a large number, all broken. Why would you do that? Another piece written about it by Chatron in 1923, yes. It's only 2 pages, but it's got an illustration of 2 of the spear points. Again, it reinforces that they were recently placed on exhibition in the Museum of the Society by Albert C. Spetnagel. So it's well documented. We know how many there were. We know that there were more that they weren't able to find the pieces for. We know basically what they looked like. We know where they were found, and we know where they ended up. But here's where the problem begins. Although well documented at first, the discovery location of the cache somehow became associated with the so-called R.P. Schwartz Mound behind the house at 725 Orange Street, some 1,000 feet, almost a quarter mile, north of George Walker's house. How could that happen? 18 years difference. As you can see, this is one of the registration cards for SHPO that basically tells you this is site Ross County 61. It seems to be a Dina culture. It's circled with a question mark if that's what they think. They gave it the name the R.P. Schwartz Mound, and they locate it behind the Schwartz house at 725 Orange Street. And he makes a mistake. He says it's near the northwest corner of Orange and Arlington Street, but he meant Worthington. And they described no formal excavation. It was only dug into by local boys and while digging a privy foundation. So here it was found originally on Laurel Street while digging a foundation for a cellar. And by the time it gets associated with the Schwartz house up there on 725 Orange Street, it's associated with a privy, and the only digging done was by some local boys. They describe the site. They say it's a mound 10 feet or 10.3 feet high, 120 feet in diameter, covered on trees on the east side. West side in the field is badly pitted. And there's a reason for that, I believe. And then it says, cache of points found about 18 years ago when foundation was put in, and A.C. Spetnagel has them. So this is definitely the Spetnagel cache. How on earth did they make this association? Well, talked to Jeb and a number of other people, and Jeb said to me that the guy who registered all of this, H. Holmes Ellis, his name's up there someplace, I think. I don't see it right there, but that's who did it. He was charged with going around and registering, making sure that they had registry for all the known mounds in Ohio. And evidently he was hitting Ross County around the beginning of July, and he made it over to Orange Street on the 4th of July. I'm making this up, but it had to be something like this. Yes. I'm H. Holmes Ellis. Well, I'm Robert P. Schwartz. What can I do for you? It's the 4th of July, you know, we're going to have a cookout here pretty soon. And he said, well, I don't mean to be a bother, but I'm with the Ohio Archaeological and Historical Society, and I want to make sure that this mound has been registered. What do you know about it? I've heard rumors that boys used to dig in it and that they found some rocks in there when they were digging for a privy. And it's probably because he lived 1,000 feet away from where this actually happened, some 18 years earlier. And he said, well, thank you. Do you know the name of it? Mr. Schwartz says, no, I don't. Guess what? He named it for it. So that's how it becomes the Schwartz Mound, and that's how the artifacts become associated with it. The problem is, based on work that Tim Everhart and I have been doing, we are 100% sure that this mound should never have been named the Schwartz Mound. It was actually a group of 4 mounds that were excavated in 1889 by Falke and Moorhead. And the reason it looked like it was badly pitted on the west side is because this mound was actually 4 mounds at all different heights. And the archies that we've got here tonight, like Brett and Jeb, please correct me if I'm in any way wrong about this, but the way I understand the typical Adena mound or way of burial is somebody dies, he's important enough to be buried, they lay him out usually on some logs or some leaves and logs combined or just the bark, and heap a little mound over it. So he might only be, this mound might only be 2 feet tall. Somebody else dies at the right time in the right place, they build another little mound next to that one. And pretty soon, after 20 or 30 people die, you've got a 40-foot in diameter base of a mound, and then they come back, next group of people die, they start stacking those on top. And by the time they're done, you can end up with something 65 to 75 feet tall, like you find at Grave Creek over at Moundsville, West Virginia, or the Miamisburg Mound over near Dayton. Any of you been to there, either of those? You've got to go to the Miamisburg Mound. It will blow you away. You cannot imagine 65 feet of earth and the circumference that that has. And so I think that's what was going on. And again, I'm not the official archaeologist, but I've given a lot of thought to this. I think that the reason there are 4 mounds conjoined there is because it was not really a completed mound in their mind yet. They're still adding to it, and once they get up to a certain height that's satisfactory to them, then they will kind of smooth it all out and even it out and give it a nice contour. And it seems to make sense. And if you are familiar with the Piketon Mound Cemetery, check that out sometime. There are 4 interconnected mounds there, and one of them's, I'd say, 20 feet tall, another one's 10 feet tall, another one's 8 feet tall, another one's 3 feet tall. And basically all of them together would fit in this room. But by the time they buried enough people in there and then mounded over or around, like it would have been a 30-foot mound, which is pretty common for what all these mounds between Water Street and the Adena Mound seem to have averaged out at about 30 feet. So I think that's what's going on here, but it's just sad that this misinformation got entered because later archaeologists used that information to rely on, it's got to be factual, and so they're thinking that we have an Adena mound that had a cache of turkeytails found in it. So how does that muddy the water if you're trying to figure out who made the turkeytails? And from what I understand, I got this from Tim, he thought that there maybe are 3 different mounds where there are claims that turkeytails have been found. That's the only evidence that the Adena could have made the turkeytails. And this one is sketchy, and Tim thought at least one of those others was sketchy. And so maybe there really is no evidence at all that the Adena ever made any of the turkeytails, which leaves the way open. So are there some contemporary people living here in Ohio at the same time as the Adena before the Hopewell? And we don't think of it that way. So it's important insights that we can get from something like this. All right. Any questions? Did I lose anybody on that? I hope that makes sense to you. So as I said, there's good reason to believe that Ellis's Schwartz Mound is actually the weathered remains of the Worthington group, 4 conjoined mounds, and they were so packed that Moorhead actually had to bring a team of horses and plows in to break the soil up so that they could excavate it. So that would explain why any mounding and pitting was there. I think it's a really solid case to be made that that's what's really going on here. And notice, there's a good report of all the artifacts that were found in this mound in 1889, written by Moorhead, and he makes no mention of any kind of cache of broken bifaces, and he would have noticed that for sure. 300 sections of points, all buried in a compact area. So, moving on. Here's an 1867 plat map showing the estate of Eleanor Watts. Eleanor Watts is really Eleanor Worthington. She married a Dr. Watts, who was a next door neighbor, basically. Her father was the Thomas Worthington, and she inherited 189 acres at the time of his death. That 189 acres is a very significant group of lots of property to me, because when my wife and I moved to Chillicothe, we lived up in this end of town. This is that end up where North Pye is, Buckeye and Beechwood and Cedar, Laurel, all of those streets up to the end of North Pye. And what's interesting is when her land was annexed by the city in the late 1880s, this northwestern edge of her property became the corporation limit for the city. And today, that corporation limit has Tiffin Avenue running right down the middle of it. And look what is drawn in on that map. That's the mound. So this 1867 confirmation that that mound was sitting there in the middle of Tiffin Avenue, right on the corporation limit, which is how Falke described it. Part 3, 2 parts to go. Turkeytail stem bifaces. If you are into typing points, you've got to own a copy of Noel Justice's book, and he arranges almost all of the point types into clusters. He sees them as groups that have a lot of the same characteristics, and they fit into the same time frame, and they tend to use a lot of the same flints and things like that, and the same flake removal techniques. So he calls them under the Turkeytail cluster versus the Thebes cluster versus the Kirk side notch cluster and whatever. And the name Turkeytail was given by an archaeologist from SMU named Louis Binford, and through his excavations, he came up with 3 varieties of stems on turkeytails. So there's not just one base, you've actually got at least 3, and he calls those the Fulton stem, the Harrison stem, and the Hebron stem. And whatever, they all have a distinctive stem that resembles a plucked Europygium. Have you ever heard that term? You've learned a new word, you're going to like this one. It's the fleshy posterior appendage where the tail feathers are attached, what people used to call the Pope's nose or the parson's nose. Have you ever heard that? So we'll see why here. So what's this look like? This is the Europygium diagram. This is the Europygium in the flesh, so to speak. Can you see how that resembles the base of these turkey tails? It's crazy. That's why they're called turkey tails. And upper left is the Harrison stem, and to me, the only thing that's different about it than the Fulton stem is that it tends to have straighter edges coming to a point, whereas if you look at the Fulton, they're what they call excurvate blade edges. They curve out and come to a tip. Some points have incurvate edges where they go in towards the tip, and some have the straight. And then there's another one that's called the Hebron stem, and I brought 3 examples of that. And I really think that those Hebron stems do look a lot like the beginnings of the Edina stemmed points. And so maybe if they're not making the turkey tails, they're definitely knowing the people that did make them and possibly being influenced by them. So let's see some pictures here. So upper left is a Harrison stem, lower left is a Fulton stem, and I'm not sure which one's to call the others. Some of them are more elongated. To me though, that one, I'm just just looking at the edges of the blade, since it's a lot straighter, I think that one is going to be the Harrison. And the one below it, since it's more excavate, I think that's going to be a Fulton. And again, it's a tricky business when you type these points. But I do know they're all Turkeytails, that's all I can say for sure. And then here are some Hebron Turkeytails. And look, what's really neat is the people that are making these, and they look a lot like Adena points. They are still doing that same technique where when you're mapping it out, you're leaving part of the cortex on the base or on the tip.
Why did they do that?
It's got to be something stylistic. It can't be functional. And you're a napper yourself. There's no way that cortex can hold an edge like regular flints. And again, a lot of these don't show any evidence of being used. They tended to just be made and then ritually broken.
Ceremonial points.
Yeah.
Are the different styles found mixed together in caches?
That's a good question, and I don't know that I came across anything that said one way or the other. I do know that sometimes you'll have just big bipointed blades that haven't been notched out yet, buried with the Fulton ones. But I can't answer it. But it's a great question, and I think it's an important clue. And the problem is, how many of you have found one? Most of us don't. You know, Barney has. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
5 or 6 was like.
Yeah. But most people, I bet you if you did a survey of all the surface collectors in Ohio, less than 10% of them have found one. They may be as rare or even rarer than Clovis points. I've never found one. I was with someone that we were walking, separated 3 feet apart. He spotted it before I did. That's all I can say. I got a picture of it. That's all I got as a memory. So here you can see a comparison of the Hebron style in the upper middle with the Fulton and the Harrison on the sides. But you can see a resemblance in all of them. And again, you got to imagine these things are probably made for at least 800 years. So there's a little bit of stylistic evolution, I would think, in the process here, and that might be what could be that the middle 4 at the top are more like 400 BC, and the ones on the edges and at the bottom are more like 1000 BC. Yeah, and it's just evolved, but can't say for sure. I can't wait till I get my Wayback Machine fixed, and Peabody and I will go back and check this out. All right, I'm trying. There we go. Thank you, Jeb. This is one of the many useful maps prepared by Jeb Bowen on various points types in Ohio, and I begged him for his Turkeytails. I've got a copy of them. I thought all of his maps, but I couldn't find the ones that had his Turkeytail blades on them. And what Jeb does is he personally goes out, interviews people about what they found, and he types the points and he types the flint, and then he makes a record of that. And the green dots represent single Turkeytails found throughout Ohio, and the red dots are caches or clusters of multiple points. And Barney, you said you found 5 at one spot? So that would...
Island Creek.
Oh, damn, geez. And you can see a pretty good distribution there across the state, but here we are. Is that because we're a good location? Is it some kind of bias in the way that it's being reported? It's hard to say. They are found in Ross County. Notice though, there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 caches, and we've only got 3 single or individual finds. Now, Jeb, when did you prepare this map? So how dated is it?
I've been working on this one actively,
Good, okay.
and I think that map is fairly representative here.
Okay, all right. So that gives you some idea of why most of us haven't found one. Now, this is one of the more famous local caches. I call it the Bainbridge Cache because I don't want to give away the names of the people that found it. But they were local collectors. One of them was actually a member of our chapter here. until he passed away a number of years back. And then if you want to find out about it, look up Ohio Archaeologist Volume 35, number 3, the summer of 1985, and you'll see a 3 or 4 page article on this that's very well done. It'll actually tell you who found it, describe it and everything. All right? That's a pretty nice looking set of blades there. In that same article, it shows you the guys that did it really almost were archaeologists about it. They diagrammed it as they excavated. It turns out they just found 2 points lying on the surface. They go, if there are 2 of them, there's a cache. Yahoo, you know. And so they started digging. They came back and they dug, and they found the following things here. Let's see if I can get it. First of all, this is important. There was a cluster of tips and bases of turkey tails, and amongst them were bits of charcoal. Some of them actually had been near a fire or in a fire, and they saved that charcoal and they dated it. And that date came back as some time around 2,340 years before the present, which translates roughly to 430 BC. Who do we think of in Ohio at 430 BC? Adena. But I don't know if that's I think we've got multiple peoples living here. In the middle of that cluster of stones there was a deposit of 7 turkey tails and a nice tablet, and it was really nice, a nice tablet, and a bar amulet. And they were actually stacked one row with the points going one direction, and the row beneath it with the pointed ends of the points going in the opposite direction. So they were laid out on something very, very carefully, and there was like I said, an amulet and a tablet next to them. And did I just blow through something and not unaware of? Let me back that up if I can. I was trying to make a point. Yeah, there it is. And at the bottom was another deposit, and it had broken up bone, another nice tablet, a slate gorget, and some red ochre. So wait a minute. Adena, red ochre, which is, so there's something going on. There's elements of both. And then all the way around it was a circle of stone. So it gives us some clues, but it doesn't really give us 100% solid answer. So let's take a look at some other local finds. So over on the left is a broken turkey tail from the harness collection from Site A, and I've drawn it out for you. It's on the upper terrace, right at the edge of where the Scioto washed into and eroded away this horseshoe shape. In here, and then the big shoe there, but it's on the upper terrace, so it's up at about 930 feet above sea level. The one that was found on Harness 1 is on a middle terrace instead of an upper terrace, and it's only at about 580 feet. And I've been working on this project where I'm taking the entire Harness collection and I'm mapping out where all the different point types were found there and the different elevations, and so you can kind of picture who's using what elements of the land masses there. And I found that you find certain groups down in the bottoms, you find certain groups up in the tops, and then you've got people that are using all of that. It's kind of an interesting project. On the right, this is the one I almost found. I was like, look at that table. It's a surface find like the other. It's unbroken. I can't identify the chert on the one from Harness A, but this is definitely one of those blue-gray Wyandotte-like cherts from southern Indiana, and it's definitely a folded stem. The one on the left, I know it's a turkey tail even without the base. It's got the exact same thinness, same flaking style. These guys are using the same flaking technique mostly that the Adena use. They're taking off these big flakes, and it's just random. Unlike a lot of the earlier Flint nappers, they're doing ribbon flaking and collateral, and it's just incredible difference in the appearance of the surface. But anyway, it's close. Another cache set was found, and I wish I had written down the date, but all I got, somebody made a Xerox copy of them. And I was able to blow it up on one of them and got a pretty decent representation of the surface for the two on the right. But they were part of this person's share of 5, because 3 people were hunting in the bottoms of the Scioto, north of town, in Ross County. Found 21 of these, and they were all sitting up on little pedestals of dirt because the bottoms had flooded and washed away all of the loose soil, retaining that soil that was trapped under each and every one of those points, and they walk out in the ceiling. There's a point, there's a point, there's a point. I thought Mr. Harness told me about doing that once. I've never experienced that, but an incredible discovery, and they divided it up amongst the 3 of them. So each of them got at least 5, and a couple of them maybe got a couple more. Maybe they took however many each of them found, I don't know. Tended to be generally made from a blue-gray nodular chert. The 3 most obvious candidates are the Cobden cherts in southern Illinois, the Wyandotte chert found in Harrison County, Indiana, nicknamed Indiana hornstone, and then the St. Genevieve, which is from eastern Missouri and southern Illinois, but as Rich would say, basically they're all part of that St. Genevieve limestone formation, correct?
Yeah.
But I can also tell you, in our collections here, we have one made of a nodular flint from Carter County, Kentucky, and I think we haven't quite cataloged that one yet, Rich, but I know it's on our list to do. So hopefully you'll be able to tell us whether it's the Carter Cave or the Paoli.
Paoli and Lockersburg, Paoli went to Carter Cave, but they are 2 different scenes. They're close together, but they're 2 different things.
Okay. And
Paoli is normally nodular, but the Carter Cave can be nodular or tabular. But if it's tabular, it's probably from a lens, not from a constant sand.
okay.
By a lens meaning it's slower. It doesn't extend.
Yeah. Like a seam of coal or something like that. Yeah. Great. As a person who tries to learn how to type the flint, these are the characteristics I would recognize. They are thin and they are flat. They have a random flaking pattern, although some of them do have retouch along the blade edges. They tend to be excurvate for the most part, but we saw that the Harrison, for example, looks like a lot of those have a straight blade edge. And almost always there's the remains of the cortex either on the tip or the bottom or on both. Last part, we've almost made it. Who made them? Big problem is few specimens have been encountered during any kind of a professional excavation. And take that cache of 21 found north of town in the Scioto Bottoms. It's never been studied by archaeologists. All that information is totally lost. It's been divided up amongst the 3 people that found it. What are the chances it'll ever get reunited together again, and anybody will find out who it was that found them and interview them and learn what we can about it. And they were surface finds, so who knows how deeply they were buried originally. And the other thing is, are they buried with a body, the remains of a body, or not? Can't always say, because that's very susceptible to decay, so you might find what you think is just a buried cache, and it turns out it was part of a burial. So it's really hard to piece this all together. Sometimes they're broken, sometimes they're not broken. They can be found in caches associated with red ochre burials. But can they also be found in association with Adena? Like I say, there are 3 mounds that people have been claiming in recent years that are Adena mounds that had caches in them, but one of them that I know I can disprove is the Schwartz Worthington Group mound. So maybe there's only 2, and maybe those are sketchy as well, we'll see. They're seen by some as having characteristics of late archaic to early woodland Adena Dixon points. And then there's a mound called the Metcalf Mound. Is anybody here familiar with the Metcalf Mound? I haven't really been able to find much out about it yet, but I think it's supposedly one of the Adena mounds that has some of these, and I'm going to look into that further and see what I can find. So, I'm going to put Brett on the spot. He didn't know I was going to ask him this question. I was trying to figure out who the Red Ochre people are. There's not a lot that's really detailed and definitive out there. They have association with the Great Lakes. They are also associated with New England area in the maritime areas. They are characterized by sprinkling red ochre, ground up ochre, or hematite all over artifacts, bones, associated things with the caches that are found. A site down in Louisiana claims that these red ochre people came out of Wisconsin down into the Ohio Valley and may be what become Hopewell. Have you heard that? Is there any possibility? Is it?
Great connection.
Well, the copper starts really showing up in the Hopewell period. And their burials tend to be a little bit more elaborate than the Adena burials, and the Hopewell burials certainly are. And I'm not trying to put Brett on the spot, I'm just giving him a chance in case he has any insights at all.
I actually think of it as a burial complex or a ritual that different people share. I don't think it is a people. I think it's sort of like Hopewell, widely shared by different people, different cultures. I think the best association that I'm aware of, like in the Illinois River Valley, Kramer Points, Marion Thick ceramics, and red ochre burial goods go together, and that's like the closest thing to a, like maybe that is an example of a culture where you got pottery, and these burial trades happening together. But otherwise, it seems to be sort of dislocated. And like here in Ohio, glacial cane and red ochre, are very, there's a lot of confusion about it. Are those different things or are they the same thing? Mm-hmm. And I think it's the same thing. It's this burial rite or ritual that's...
So I think a lot of people are saying that don't think of the Hopewell as one group of people, don't think of the Adena as one group of people, but as groups of people who share certain practices and technologies.
Yeah. I think of Hopewell as a religious movement, Adena is a religious movement, and red ochre is probably a religious movement.
And they're the Baptists, and the Adena are the Methodists.
Yeah.
You do find red ochre burials in Adena.
Oh, yeah.
Find them in Hopewell.
So, but it's kind of neat if we can really piece it together and get a handle on it. And so that's the issues I wanted to raise with you folks, and I think that might be it. Oh, one last map here. And this is one that shows you some of the Missouri, Southern Illinois hornstone finds. 6 of them are single finds, and 11 of them are multiple finds. The smaller circles are the singles there. Another cache. This is one that has been recently registered with the Clark May Museum in Circleville by our own Jim Bowen. And it's a part of a cache that's called the Lataville Cache, and it's made out of the St. Genevieve Church. And since they couldn't refit any of those 5 pieces, what's the best speculation? There's more. There's got to be more, and who knows how many. If you've got that many pieces and nothing fits, it might turn out to be a big cache if they ever are able to relocate it. Comments of any kind? Thank you for your patience, and I hope that it was interesting and got you thinking about some things. Thank you.
Now, is there any interest at all in making this April 15th Archaeology Day really something super duper? This is Tom's last year here. He's retiring as the director of the museum. This will be his last Archaeology Day. And I would really like to send him off with a bang. And I'd like to have, I know I can do 2 tables. Barney can do 20 tables, but he'll probably do 3. Rich can do 2.
What's the date?
It's Saturday, April 15th. It'll be right here. We'll set up between 9:30 and 10. The crowds will start coming in at 10. We'll be done by 2. Tom will supply pizza and drinks, so you can take a break and go get a snack. And it's a good. I saw something on it, but it didn't register because I've been doing mound work and Turkeytail work. Does anybody know? When's Ripley show? Is it the 18th?
No, check this out. Do not, you heard me, do not go by what I say.
18th?
Check it out. But I think is it this Saturday?
I think it's March 18th. Yes.
This Saturday, I think.
And while we got everybody here, remember I mentioned somebody might be able to help us find the Green Lawn Cemetery, and there was a cache, Turkeytail found in Green Lawn Cemetery. There's a photograph of it, I cannot find it. They were digging the grave, and I forget how many there were, but it's documented somewhere. I thought about calling township, maybe some of the older guys might have heard about it, tried to track it down.
I'm glad you're raising it, and I remember you
Well,
saying,
there's not many people.
is there anybody here local enough and old
Green Lawn
enough?
Cemetery.
Cache of Turkeytail.
And it was probably,
Green Lawn,
probably in the 40s, maybe. That just sticks in my head for some reason, but they had a photograph. And they were all in a circle.
I don't doubt you a bit.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping like this will happen for you, like we got confirmation of somebody that remembers this mound on Tiffin Avenue. And there's gotta be somebody out
Yeah,
there.
there's gotta be somebody else by me.
And it'd be nice to add that to
But I'm
the
gonna keep
database.
researching that, and you'll be the first guy.
Okay. Jamie, think about showing.
Yeah, we might.
Great.
Not much older.
Thanks, everybody.
I only have this, but I've given away most of it. That's the Flint comes out of.
I gotta help her with